Good afternoon, welcome, and thank you to you all for joining us for the first event of Refugee Week 2021 here at Keele University and Keele Students' Union. I'm Hina Sheikh, the Race Equality Officer here at Keele University, and this year we are joining the UK-wide celebration of Refugee Week. This week celebrates the contributions, stories, arts, culture, and experiences of refugees and asylum seekers. It's an opportunity to educate ourselves and to listen to the experiences of refugees and asylum seekers. The theme for Refugee Week this year is We Cannot Walk Alone, taken from Martin Luther King Jr.'s famous I Have a Dream speech. And we are asking our Keele community to embrace this theme by furthering our collective understanding and joining us in seeking a better world for refugees and asylum seekers. Today's event has been organised in conjunction with ASHA North Staffordshire, a local charity who work to support refugees and asylum seekers in the local area, and we are really grateful to ASHA for joining us. We will begin today's event by watching a documentary created by Keele and ASHA North Staffordshire, which will look at the work of the charity, as well as provide an insight into the experiences of refugees and asylum seekers who live in the local area. This will be followed by a live question and answer session hosted by Russell Clark, Head of the Languages Centre here at Keele University, and he'll be joined by some of our friends from ASHA. We want to thank you for joining this event today, and we encourage you to join us for our other Refugee Week events, and information about these can be found online on our web pages. So without further ado, we will get the documentary started. Thank you once again for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the event.
Support comes from a variety. Welcome to this short documentary about the work of ASHA North Staffordshire. This documentary has been produced as part of Keele University's Refugee Week and aims to provide some insight into the life of asylum seekers and refugees, as well as highlight the support provided to them by ASHA North Staffordshire. It also looks to dispel some of the myths about asylum seekers which are perpetuated by elements of the mainstream media and by the actions of the UK government. The documentary will include interviews with Godfrey Semenega, the services manager of ASHA and himself a refugee from Rwanda, and Tamba Musa, a refugee from Sierra Leone who now works for ASHA as a social inclusion program coordinator. ASHA North Staffordshire is a refugee charity based in Hanley. It has a large centre for the ASHA community where it hosts a number of support groups and activities. ASHA North Staffordshire was formed in 2005 to help men, women and children who seek shelter from persecution. Every year it provides assistance to over 900 people in the Stoke-on-Trent area. ASHA's funding and support comes from a variety of sources, much from contributions provided by private individuals, but ASHA also receives funding from these other charities and organisations. ASHA has a board of trustees and a number of permanent salaried staff, all of whom work to ensure that asylum seekers and refugees in the Stoke-on-Trent area are afforded at least some of the protection and support that they desperately need. We begin with a very short interview with Godfrey Semenega. Godfrey is the ASHA Services Manager and one of the original founders of ASHA. He's a graduate of the Free University of Brussels, and among many other things, he's worked for local health authorities and several NHS trusts in northwest England, where he promotes health among black and minority ethnic communities, in particular HIV/AIDS prevention and care.
ASHA North Staffordshire is a charity based in Stoke-on-Trent, which supports asylum seekers and refugees. You know, Stoke-on-Trent is one of the special area for asylum seekers. So we do have around 900 asylum seekers in Stoke-on-Trent, plus refugees, and those who are not anymore in the system, means there are around 1,200 asylum seekers, refugees, and other people who might have a refugee background. The charity was funded by some refugees, of course, with support of local community members. Back in 2004, it started as a small community group, which is what was supporting asylum seekers from African Great Lakes. And then it became apparent that there was not any community-based organization was supporting asylum seekers. So they start supporting people from different parts of the world who are seeking asylum and living in Stoke-on-Trent. Sometimes in 2006, the organization became a charity. And then after that, they start having funding from different charitable organizations like Robbie Williams Foundation to support asylum seekers and refugees. And they started to support asylum seekers from different background in terms of region, nationalities. And they were supporting over 51 different nationalities. And the charity grew up and it became a very big organization now, which is, I think, is one of the leading charity which support asylum seekers in North Staffordshire. And then underneath, there's different projects like English classes, women's club, men's club, children club. We do a social inclusion program. We do have a big project working with asylum seekers children. We got a befriending program where we recruit members for local community to become friend of asylum seekers. And then they can have a mutual friendship when they can exchange culture, they can learn languages. You know, we had someone who say, I want to be a friend of an asylum seekers who was French speaker. So I can teach them English and then they can teach me some French, you know, and that's part of this project. But the aims and the objective of the charity is really a social integration of asylum seekers and refugees in North Staffordshire. When you say social integration, it's all about integration, means making asylum seekers feeling part of the community, working with asylum seekers to feel they're part of the community and they can contribute to local community, making local community to welcome asylum seekers and they welcome them in their own community and they make one big, strong North Staffordshire community with a very strong community cohesion. So in that, there's many things we are doing to make this happening. One of these kind of social inclusion activities. So we take asylum seekers, they go around in the city, they do like little picking. They do some voluntary work in the community, in hospitals, in care homes. They go to clean the river, the canal. They clean some local parks. You know, they do some drumming in local community to teach some people to know about their culture and teach them to do some drumming. We do some cooking so people can come and have some food from different culture in the background. We have been very active and involved in some international event organized in North Staffordshire. There's one was organized has been organized in Newcastle. Asylum seekers been very active in that and really providing kind of information about over the country where they come from and the culture. We have been involved in the Orseja International Day. So asylum seekers went there to do some drumming and some dancing with local community. So that's all about ASHA really, you know. Let's start by refugee, because that makes things more easier for people to understand. A refugee is someone who has been granted refugee status by a country who signed 1951 Geneva Convention. This 1951 Geneva Convention says that a person who feels persecuted from his own country can leave the country and go seek protection in another country which signed the 1951 Geneva Convention. So what does mean persecution? The convention is very clear. It means someone persecuted because of race, religion, nationality, being part of social group, and political and for political opinions. So anyone who is persecuted in their own country has right to leave the country and go seek protection from another country. So when they go to seek protection in another country, they apply to be protected. And when the government of the country is seeking protection, look at his case and believe that this person is persecuted back in his country because of this under 1951 Geneva Convention, then they grant them protection, so they become refugee. Now, an asylum seeker is someone who's in the process of seeking protection under 1951 Geneva Convention, who the government hasn't yet decided or granted refugee status to them. So means when you're persecuted, you go seek protection from another country. While you put your claim, while you are waiting, you are called an asylum seeker. So when you've been granted, you become refugee. So when you become refugee, under the law, you become as anybody, any citizen of that country. You can work, you can study, you can do everything you can need in the country. Only thing you can't is to vote or to become like a local councillor or any like MP or councillor or elected mayor. You can't, but you got all right apart of that. You can access to health services, and you work as anybody, and you can access to public fund, you can apply benefit and everything. Now, when you're an asylum seeker, you don't have the right. You can work. Of course, you can vote. You just need to wait until the government decides about your case.
To add a little more background to this, Amnesty International define a refugee as a person who has fled their own country because they are at risk of serious human rights violations and persecution there. The risk to their safety and life was so great that they felt they had no choice but to leave and seek safety outside their country because their own government cannot or will not protect them from those dangers. Refugees have a right to international protection. An asylum seeker is a person who's left their country and is seeking protection from persecution and serious human rights violations in another country, but who hasn't yet been legally recognized as a refugee and is waiting to receive a decision on their asylum claim. Seeking asylum is a human right. This means everyone should be allowed to enter another country to seek asylum.
If they don't believe in your case, in your statement, then you become what they call failed asylum seekers. We don't like to call it failed asylum seekers. As social groups who campaign for asylum seekers, we called it refused, because failed means they made themselves failed. But in my intervention, I will show you how really people failed in their application because of the policies, not because of the reason why they are claiming asylum. There's many policies which is make people being refused. In more details, let's give you an example. When you come here, you need to put your claim. You need to put an application to seek protection from the government. And then that process of seeking asylum, of seeking protection, there are government policies. They follow up to decide your case. Some of the policies are very, very, very hostile to discourage people to come to seek asylum in this country. That is fact. Let's give you an example. They say in the policy, you need to prove your fact to the government. Okay? You all know that to give your proper fact, you need to understand the system. You need to have language. You need to be able to speak the language. Okay? You need to know the policy, what they follow to decide your case. For instance, they say you need to convince the caseworker that you are telling the truth. Any small mistake, any small contradiction you put in your case could be used against you and refuse you protection. Let's give an example. A lady who in her statement, for example, says, the government police came to my house at 1 o'clock. Okay? The caseworker asked, was 1 o'clock in afternoon or in the morning? You might say in afternoon. Okay. The police came to my house 1 o'clock in the afternoon and they raped him. Okay. And then they will ask them over question. Then they come back and they say, did they ask when they raped you, were your children at home? Okay. The lady might say, yes, they were at home. Okay, that's fine. So they carry on doing interview, make the case and everything. Now, this caseworker, we go to the website or get information that in the country the lady is from, and see what time the children at school. If 1 o'clock the children are supposed to be at school, therefore she can't be raped when the children are at home. That means they can't believe her. Even she can provide over evidence that she has been persecuted, but they might say, no, we don't believe you in your story because you say that you have been raped when the children are at home. When you checked in your country, 1 o'clock, the children are at school. You see what I mean?
Mm.
But probably that day the children didn't go to school. Probably the lady was distressed to take the children at school. Probably they checked by 1 o'clock. There was it was bank holiday. because bank holiday different from one country to another country, and then she'll be refused, and they will call her fed asylum seeker. But she's not, for us, she's not fed asylum seeker. It's the system, the policies, which makes her become refused. So we call them refused, not fed asylum seekers. Another policy might be you need to seek asylum in the 72 hours when you arrived in his country. That used to be a policy back in 2004. I remember that. So when you arrive here, you need to go to claim your asylum within 3 days. So can you imagine someone who might land in London first time? He doesn't know where his home office. He doesn't know where to go. He might be relying on a friend who might say, okay, I'm working a day shift this week. I will take you next week to the home office to claim your asylum. And then you go to claim 1 week after, and you have to be honest when you get to home office. When they ask him, when did you come this country? I came 1 week or 2 weeks ago. Why did you wait until now to come to claim asylum? Because I didn't have anybody to bring me here. And then they would say, no, we don't believe you. And then you become fed asylum seeker. It's those kind of small policies which make people feel like become refused. When you claim your asylum, the government will give you a solicitor to help you. Okay? They help you to put a claim and then defend your case in front of, they help you defend the case in interview. No, you do your own interview, but be supporting you. If they refuse you, you can do appeal decision and be supported by the solicitor from legal aid. So if you don't win the case in the appeal, the government withdraw legal aid for you, and you need to fund your own solicitor. You are not allowed to work. You don't have any support. You need to pay immigration solicitor, and the immigration solicitors, they are very, very expensive. You look at something like £500, £400 less an hour to look at your case. So there's kind of barriers or stop people to access to legal support when they're claiming asylum, you know. So those are kind of really kind of policies which is really make people to become what government say fed asylum seekers, but we call them refused.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the main reason is because they are persecuted back in their country. If they were not persecuted, they will not come here. But the reason why they choose to come to England, there are many reasons. One is some people might have relatives living in England who claim asylum and have been granted refugee status who are living in England. It's more easier for them to come to England and they put a claim, similar claim to the relatives, because the government look at the same case and grant them refugee status straight away. Secondly, in the UK, there is the government got what we call every country background policies. Those government policies are different from different countries. For example, someone from Eritrea in this country, they believe that young people from Eritrea, they live under very strict regime, dictatorship regime, and they don't have any choices to do what they want. They are forced to do military services. And the government will say, okay, someone from this country, that's our policy. If you come for asking persecution, because we know the background of the country, we know the dictatorship in that country, this country got those many human rights abuse and things like that, then we accept them as we give them protection. But probably in other country, in France or in Belgium or in Germany, they don't have same policies to that country. They might not treat this government as dictatorship government. They might not treat this government as a government who really abuse human rights. And we all know that these Western government, they do support some government in Africa who are dictators, who abuse human rights. So if a government is supporting this government, they won't accept someone from that country to be protected, because that will be against their own policies in that country. So UK might have different policies from other country, which give more advantages to those from those countries. And then the second reason is, I have to be honest, the integration in the UK is quicker than other countries. I mean, there is hostile environment in terms of policies, but I believe, from my experience, there's quite a good community willing to integrate asylum seekers. I mean, individuals or group like churches, like charities like ASHA, and some individuals. Our charity is funded by a charitable organization, but we do get at least over 20, let's say 15% of budget from local donation from local members. So that shows really how individuals, members of the community, they are very willing to integrate asylum seekers and refugees. And that is another positive point to bring people here. The third point is 99% of asylum seekers who have been granted refugee status start to work within 2 months, pay tax and contribute to local economy. That is a fact, because there's a very good, clear job. I'm not saying job opportunities, but in the UK, the jobs are very easier to get. Let me give my personal experience. I came here, my background was public health. I could really make a sentence in English. Okay, I had a caseworker from Refugee Council who was helping me to develop myself in terms of employment and everything. When she did an assessment, she looked at my CV, she said, "Oh, you don't need to go back to school. You got already qualification. You can start working." I said, "No, how do you want me to start working when I can't speak English properly?" She said, "You learn English when you be working, And I applied the job. And my first job after 2 months, I was an asylum seeker. I was a granted refugee, was grade 6 in NHS, a very good grade, and I learned English from that. So the system here, they don't look how you're speaking English, how really you're good in the English. They look at what you can contribute, what you can give to the job. And most of the job here, they are warehouse jobs, quick training, pick boxes, put them there, cleaning. And most of them as well, they go for university training they graduate after 2-3 years, and they start working as a nurse in hospitals, social workers, teachers in schools, and the young people who come here, they got big ambitions. Some of them, they want to be policemen, they want to be lawyers, solicitors, Sometimes you speak to the children, they say, oh, I want to be MP, I want to be this, all big ambition, because really, UK community, I think is historical. They all welcome people, I mean, individuals, but there's other side like right-wing people who don't welcome asylum seekers, but they forget how much really refugees and migrants contribute to local community. Something people think, oh, they come for jobs, they come to get our benefit. But look at here around Stoke-on-Trent, how many refugees are claiming benefit. I don't know none of them, and trust me, 99% of refugees or asylum seekers in Stoke-on-Trent, I know them. They come through as ASHA. I know what they're doing. They are really working hard, and they might do 2-3 shifts, work normal hours, being a taxi driver in the evening, go to do security on door in weekends, and rest, go to church on Sunday, be ready to start a normal job on a Monday, and that's their life. And I would say, because of their background, the situation, they are less likely to be involved in any criminal activities, asylum seekers and refugees. Not because they are supposed to be involved, no, because they live in fear. They know that they are not their own country. Any small mistake they will make, they'll put them in first flight back in their country. So that's why they avoid to be involved in any kind of criminal activities or any kind of thing make them in troubles with the police or with the local community. One, of course, as I said, hostile policy environment, which has been deliberately put in place by the government. Secondly, language barrier. The language barrier, I would say in the beginning, yes, but from my own experience, it's easier to learn English than French or Spanish, I think. So people can speak broken English and get bread in the supermarket, but I don't think if you can speak broken French and get bread in France, because the difference between the R and the L means lots in French. So language barriers, social isolation. Most of them, they found themselves in this country, in Stoke-on-Trent. They don't have any friends, any relatives. They don't know anybody. Another issue is this destitution. So they live, when they still supported by the government, they get £37 a week to buy everything. You can imagine someone living in Tunstall, which is north of the city, to come to learn English at the ASHA, he needs to spend £5.50 for 1 day bus pass. So if you need to come 4 times a week, that would be £22. And you still have only £15 to buy food a week, which is not enough. When they become refused, the government stop any kind of support they give to them, accommodation and £37. So they live without nothing. So they live on the street, no accommodation, nothing, nothing. Another issue they face is, most of them, they come because, of course, they've been persecuted back in their country, or they come because there's a war in their country. Children, they witness some traumatic event and horrible things. They come with distress, post-traumatic stress disorder. Women have been victim of rape or tortured back in their country. And in journey as well, from their country to here, they need to cross many countries. You have seen probably documentary what happened to us refugees in Libya, who the rebel tortured them every single day. They are being sexually abused, killed. So those might end up here in the UK. So they got an issue of losing self-esteem and confidence because of what they have been. They are got mental health problem, so it's difficult for them to access to services or even to cope with asylum process because of because of mental problem and the lack of confidence. The last thing is, I would say, if you look at stock, now it's like one community. It used to be six towns, but still you can see Muslim town store. They are still very small part of the cities. So asylum seekers, they live in isolation. When they live in stock in town store, they don't feel part of the community because the community doesn't know even they're there. The home office drop them in the house. There's no information provided to them. The neighbors don't know who's living there, who they are. They can't communicate with them. So those are really big issues those people are facing. Children delay to get into school. So if you look at a child from Syria or from Yemen, they probably haven't been to school for many years. If they get here, the parents, they don't know about English education system. They don't know how to apply a place in school. And the main point for them when they arrive here is not to take the children at school. For them, it's very important to be in a safe place. In the first instance, that thinking to take them to school. But here we know that every child needs to go to attend a school. So those are really issues we face when we deal with those new arrivals in the city. I would say the pandemic, COVID, was a very big issue for everybody. I would say for everybody, not only for asylum seekers and refugees, or big issues for ASHA, North Staffordshire. So asylum seekers being affected as other members of local communities. But asylum seekers will say that they're being affected more because of those issues I was talking before. I did talk about before. So, for example, when the lockdown started, they start missing personal connections. Because they have to stay in the house. They didn't have any telephones. They didn't have any TV. They're not allowed to have internet at home. They're not allowed to have TVs. So they used to come to our center, socializing, meet other people using computers. You have probably seen them when you come to supervise your English teacher. They are on the computers. They sit down. So they have been missing personal connection and the relationship with others. They missed trusted support. So in asylum seeker, we like to come to use computer in the ASHA IT room rather than using local library computers, because they trust volunteers in the ASHA who understand them. Most of our volunteers, they're all as well asylum seekers, you know. So they miss that, so they can't get it. You know, a family living in a Tunstall, if there's any kind of lift in terms of lockdown, they're not going to use a local park to take their children to play there. They fear. They want to be with someone from ASHA to take them to local park because they fear going out alone. So they mistrusted support. And that was worsened by social isolation. You know, they put two single mom to live in 2-bedroom house. You know, those terraced house being how small they are. So putting one single mom from Albania with a single mom from, let's say, Africa to live together in the same house. There's not enough space where the children can play. There's nothing they can do at home, no TV, no computers. So living those overcrowded houses really had a very big impact in terms of mental health, distress. Children don't have nothing to do. We had many calls from parents say they can't really cope with children because they don't have nothing to do. There's no games, there's no toys they can play. Another issue was which affected asylum seekers and the organization is basic needs. You know, asylum seekers used to come to ASHA to get some more clothes donated. They would come to get some food, but the center was closed and there was no way they would come to get them. So in that, we adapted our services. We start delivering food to their home. And that was an additional cost in terms of volunteers. And as you know, half of our volunteers, they were retired people. And when the pandemic started, they have to socially isolate themselves. So we had few volunteers who were young to do the job. So we had to recruit more people to take the food to the families. Another issues from the COVID-19 was the children had the kind of reduced access to education. You know, when the lockdown started, there was like online learning. So the children could go, the children would go to online and learn. But those asylum seekers didn't have any computer to home, no tablet, nothing. So as an organization, we had to do fundraising to get some money to buy tablets so we can give to the children and young people so they can learn from home. And then and this pandemic as well, you know, has a very big impact on their well-being and their mental well-being because, of course, this isolation, lack of support, accessing to services. For instance, before the lockdown, we had 2 professional counselors who were providing counseling in our center. So when the lockdown started, we said, we're going to start providing counseling through telephones calls. After a week, it was impossible for counselors to provide this counseling through the phone because of language barrier. And so we had to change it. We had to stop providing counseling and change it in kind of a telephone emotional support. You know, those are really kind of issues we faced, and in terms of money and funding, we had to adapt our services. When we adapted our services, of course, that had implication in terms of finance. So we had to raise some more money, which we haven't raised yet. And the demand in terms of food increased dramatically. We used to give around 120 bags of food parcels every week. During lockdown, the demand was almost double. The demand was double because of simple reasons. The family didn't have enough food to feed their children. You know, before, the parents will take children to school and the children will have lunch at school. When they come back home, they make them like tea and something to eat before bed. Now they have to feed them through the day, with small money they get. It was impossible to get them enough food. So because of that, we had to increase amount of food we're giving to the families. We did double so we can meet the need of children. Yeah.
To put this into some context, research carried out by Refugee Action has found that among asylum seekers, COVID-19 has led to a 37% increase in food poverty, a 10% increase in asylum seekers suffering from a sense of mental isolation and loneliness, and a 23% increase in recorded cases of tech poverty.
When we work with people like asylum seekers and refugees who went through horrific experience back in their country, who might have taken some very high risk to get here, it was very hard for us as an organization to teach asylum seekers the risk of COVID-19 because they know they crossed Mediterranean from Libya to Italy, and they know if they take the boat from Libya to Italy, they know that the chance to get there is not more than 10%. So to tell them that small virus was killing people, it was very difficult to educate them. And that was an issue because local population, members of communities, they were aware about COVID-19 because they were able to watch news. They were able to see how many people are dying every single day. But those asylum seekers, they are not allowed to have a TV at home, so they can't watch news. So they don't know what's going on, you know. You stay at home. Why? COVID-19, what is that? Is it killing people? They don't know that next door died. They say ambulance passing, but they know what is in. You know, they don't have any clue what's going on. So that was another issue. We had really to work hard to get COVID-19 information leaflet translated in different languages to send to each address, where our staff and the volunteers, they had to call everybody and then spend time to explain to them about COVID-19. I think that is a misleading statement, and that's something promoted by right-wing media just to undermine the right of people, human rights of people in general. I'm not saying about asylum seekers only. So how many asylum seekers really use health services? Most of them, they use primary care GPs. They even have a full access to second care. Did you know that? The policy does allow them to access to second care. It's a discretion for the GP to refer them second care, unless they got some clinical chronic illness, which are very rare, you know. So that's not really a big issue, you know. The education, again, how many of them access to education? How many asylum seekers are accepted in Keele University? I think I know only one or two. So is that means they are really, they are here to access to education? No. They access to education because there's demand from the community. They access to nursing course, to social services, because there's a need in that area. As anybody from local community want to go to do social services, social sciences, social work, nursing, because there's a need there to fill the gaps. So that is the fact. So in terms of health, that's absolutely wrong. This misleading statement. Nobody traveled from Yemen or from Syria to come to have brain surgery. No. Again, that same misleading information. I think people need to understand UK is a very diverse country, historical, very diverse country. Believe it or not, those are facts. We do have first, second, third generation or fourth generation of Indians, Caribbeans, Pakistani. Those people came here with their culture, they mixed with English culture, and they made United Kingdom culture. Very simple. How many Indian restaurants are around here? Are they attended by only Indians, or we all attend a Indian restaurant? When I'm called to go to teach Swahili in the South Staffordshire Primary School, and I teach children, I say, when you go back to home, tell your mom, Jambo. You see how proud children are to go back and speak Swahili. You know, some people brings that kind of, let's go, when we take asylum seekers in a care home to do some African drumming to old people who suffer dementia, dementia, they enjoy it. They enjoy the African drumming. Children want to come and play the African drums, and that's the contribution. That should not be seen in negative way, you know. But they might see some of, I would say, one drop in the ocean, probably one asylum seekers being involved in an unbelievable act. But it's one drop in ocean. They should see more positive way that a mixed culture make community stronger than one culture. When I cook an African food, my neighbor, when smell some African ingredients, they want to come and test it, you know.
We'll now talk to Tamba Musa. Tamba is a refugee who is originally from Sierra Leone, where he worked as a journalist from 1995 to 2014. During the Ebola outbreak in his home country, Tamba left the editing desk and worked for the Sierra Leone Red Cross Society as the beneficiary communication officer, as a way of sensitizing communities on the epidemic, which eventually led to the sub-region overcoming the deadly Ebola virus. Tamba now works as a social inclusion program coordinator at ASHA.
That's an interesting question. It's long, but I will make it short, or I keep it short. Yeah, I've been a journalist since for 19 years. From 1995 on to 2014, I've been a journalist. And in one of my reporting days, interestingly, I reported on a story on a strike in one of our mining companies, between the mining company and the mine workers. Interestingly, that was in 2012. I left where the strike happened. That was in 2012, and I was back in Freetown. That's the capital city of Sierra Leone. And human rights lawyers from the UK contacted me in 2017 regarding the same story I published in 2012. I made a statement, and they asked me whether they could write down the statement. You know, I say, for what? They say, well, this case is in the court in the UK. If I would like to make a statement on it, I say yes, on few conditions. One, that my name and profession should not be mentioned. Well, they agreed. Initially, I made a statement. They blot out my name and my profession, but unfortunately, that was divulged. Yeah, so I had to come to the UK to, to testify in the court of law here in the UK. And once I was here, because the information was divulged, and therefore my family was attacked back twice whilst I was here testifying. So I couldn't go back to my country. So that's the reason why I'm here. Well, interestingly, I was here testifying, and my family was attacked twice. You know what that means? So they attacked my family because they were looking for me, but unfortunately, I wasn't there anymore. So you think what will happen to me if I was there? Yeah. Because the attackers, they say, if I was there, that means my mom will wear black. What that implies, that means I will be killed. Basically, some actually face asylum, language issues, language problem. Some of them, some communities have been hostile to asylum seekers and refugees. They think everybody is here, to get some benefit or whatever, which is not the case. Most people are specifically here because they are being targeted in their home countries. They are running away from persecution. You see, that's been the reason why a lot of people are here. And I believe the UK being one of the signatories to the Geneva Convention, I think they should be open hands. They should have open hands to receive refugees or whatever, I think they have more refugees or more asylum seekers. Let me not call them refugees. The more asylum seekers in France than the UK. More asylum seekers in Germany than the UK. They have more asylum seekers in Italy than the UK. So I don't think, we have the highest number of asylum seekers, I'm sure. They are trying to probably, adhere to the protocols they signed to. Yeah, like, the Refugee Convention of 1951 and all the rest of it. But I think it is not the case, actually. Yeah, more people, they are, just like I said, there are more asylum seekers in these other countries than the UK. ASHA is actually a charity that takes care of asylum seekers and refugees here in Stoke-on-Trent. Well, I, for one, I am an asylum, I would call it social inclusion coordinator. Yeah, basically my role is to educate the asylum seekers about the do's and don'ts in the UK. You will agree with me that most of these asylum seekers are coming from, or we are coming from, diverse backgrounds. Mostly, sometimes what is accepted in our countries is not accepted here. So if we don't teach these guys the do's and don'ts in the UK, they will fall into problems. Yeah, that is one. And secondly, that's why we do organize sessions, giving you an example of teaching the do's and don'ts. Like, for instance, chatting with underage girls, something like this, smoking in the bus. These are not accepted here, right? But probably in our countries where we come from, it is accepted, and some countries do accept it. So somebody will easily fall into problem. I mean, unbeknown to what he's doing, he doesn't know that what he's doing is a crime or is not accepted in society. Somebody has to teach him what to do and what not to do. Also, we organize sessions like drumming sessions, just to keep them busy. We drum for charity, for schools. We drum for churches, for care homes. All of that, we keep them together. And also we bring them together with our community stakeholders so that they can have a better coexistence, because some people think asylum seekers are troublemakers. They are here to, if you leave them for some time, they will steal whatever they've not put down. Sometimes we bring these guys together, we take them to various communities, do some litter picking together with some community leaders, just to bring them together so that they can be, they can feel more at ease with each other. And sometimes, or every Saturday, we have a football group. We go to, play some football with these guys. Simply, we want to keep their minds busy, because we don't want them to involve in, illegal activities. But, keeping them, especially the young minds, keeping them busy, will make them not to focus on illegal activities. And in those sessions, we do, speak to them a lot, to keep safe in their communities. Whatever their problems are, they can bring it to us. We can contact their community leaders, so for better coexistence.
This is the end of the documentary, and there are 6 key messages that I hope we can take away. 1, there is a key distinction between asylum seekers and refugees. 2, barriers are put in place to discourage people from seeking asylum. 3, asylum seekers and refugees are not here to steal benefits. 4, asylum seekers and refugees do not put a strain on local services. 5, asylum seekers and refugees are a valuable asset. And 6, most importantly, we should be aiming for a better coexistence, because a mixed community is stronger than one community. Thank you for listening.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the session. My name is Russell Clark, and I'm from the university's Language Centre, and I hope you found the video interesting and that it's gone some way to help you understand the situation faced by asylum seekers and refugees in the UK. At this stage, I'd like to welcome our panel guests this afternoon. We're very lucky to be joined by Godfrey Semenega and Tamba Musa, who you both saw on the video. And I'm also delighted to say that we're joined by Angela Glendenning, the Secretary for ASHA's Board of Trustees, and who's been heavily involved in ASHA since its inception, and by John Walsh, a care support worker from ASHA, who again has worked with asylum seekers and refugees for many, many years. We'll be taking questions for around the next 30 minutes or so, so do please put any questions you may have into the comment box. I'll get the ball rolling with the first question, and I'll open this to everybody on the panel. It's something that's been in the news quite a lot recently. The Home Secretary has said that the UK will now accept only asylum seekers who arrive in the UK through legitimate modes of entry. because she wants to break, in her words, the business model of smugglers. However, I've seen comments that this will just make things more difficult and dangerous for asylum seekers. Would anybody be able to comment on this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Russo. Well, that's an interesting question, you know. I think seeking asylum is human rights. Nobody should be refused or put under condition to enter this country. We are proud that UK signed 1951 Geneva Convention and its protocol. None of those statements clearly says which means or mode of entries people should use to be accepted as asylum seekers. So I believe that this is a very relevant statement and should not be accepted. It's a relevant statement, not accepted. And that is also part of this hostile environment which people are putting, the government is putting in place to discourage people to come to this country. But asylum, it's a right. There's no legal means of or mode of entry people need to use to come to this country. You can use the sea, you can use the air, you can even use parachute to get here. But the more important is about persecution and your right to claim asylum in this country. I can ask all of my panel members if they can say something.
Angela?
Sorry, there's a lot of feedback noise at the moment. I mean, I would just like to say one thing about Rita Patel. The notion that we only welcome asylum seekers who've come through a bona fide route is really nonsense. If you're fleeing for your life from your country, you can't go down to the airport with a passport and buy a ticket to get to England on a bona fide route. You flee through whatever means you can. And Rita Patel's statement that she's going to divide asylum seekers into the category of those who are welcome and those who are not has been denounced by many European countries. It's been denounced by refugee organisations. It's very probably illegal. There's a campaign against it, and very probably at the end of the day it won't happen. But she has to talk tough to appease the people that want every foreigner out of England.
Thanks very much, Angela and Godfrey. We've got a couple of questions in the comments. This is from Alexandra. I work supporting young people in their journey to higher education. I was just wondering what the age range of your service users is and how many service users you generally have. Thank you.
Right. Over a year, we probably see at least 900 asylum seekers a number of times, and they do range in every age group. So they do from families with young children to, well, not people as old as me, but people up to 60 years of age. Most of them do fall into a category of, I would say, between 19 and 30 years of age, but I'll leave it to Godfrey. Perhaps he has the statistics better on those than I have. Godfrey, would you like to comment on this?
Thank you, John. I think you're right. So we do have people from age of 0, let's say pregnant women, to age of 60, and most of people they're between 18 and 35. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Thanks both very much. We have another question from Alex, and this actually is a question that's been asked a number of times by Keele students. What opportunities are there to get involved in the work that ASHA does?
Right, Hans. Okay.
There are a lot of opportunities because we need volunteers, and with our few staff, volunteers really are the bedrock of our work. We can only use so many in the centre, and students are a slightly difficult category to place because they will go home for vacations or have exams or need to go to a tutorial. But for anybody that wants to help, I would say get in touch with ASHA. And at the moment, we've got about 10 people waiting to be volunteers. And I think 9 of them are probably from Keele or connected to Keele. And there's a myriad of tasks they can do. I mean, they could help with the football, they could help with the children in the crafts group, they could help in the women's group, they could teach English, they could do conversational English, they could repair bicycles, and they could cook for us on Fridays, because I used to do the cooking, but I don't think I'm up to it much longer. We need really a lot of cooks on a Friday when we try to have a community meal. And of course, they can campaign on our behalf. There's a lot of campaigning to be done to support asylum seekers. We're all pretty stretched, but we could help volunteers to get the ammunition to write to MPs, to express views about the hostile legislation that is at the present going through under Priti Patel's watch. So, you know, get in touch with us and we'll see what we can do. And the other thing I would say as a rider, it would be lovely if a group of Keele students wished to get together to invite some of our asylum seekers up to Keele, maybe for a play day for children, or to use a gym, or to have a football match. Or if students would raise money for a coach to get us there, that would be even better.
That's great. Thanks very much, Angela. One question that I was asked a few weeks ago. Last year, nearly 8,500 asylum seekers crossed from France to the UK by boat, compared to around 1,900 in 2019. What do you think has caused this huge increase?
Right, I'd like to answer that, or try to answer it. For one period, people are fascinated by how refugees get here. And after almost 30 years working with them, I am quite sure that coming across an unsuitable, inflatable thing is a total exception, not the rule at all. Most people come by far different routes and safer routes, I can assure you. But going back to why these crossings happen, it really started with Libya. You remember Gaddafi there. Now, Gaddafi ran a very strict controlled country, so he did. And he kept a firm grip on what was happening. And most African refugees came via Libya. And so there wasn't much crossing there during his time. But following the Arab Spring, smugglers got in on the act and began taking people across the Mediterranean in these unsuitable craft. And that was the beginning of the crossing. Now, you asked a specific question about the crossing from France. Well, apparently a number of these smugglers have moved to the coast of France, and they were responsible for this increase in people coming across that way, which I believe is a quicker way. If you get to the coast of France and you're waiting for lorries and different vehicles to get across, if you go to one of these people, they'll fit you up much faster. I am informed. And that was one of the major reasons why you had this increase in number coming across. But I noticed, Russell, you used the word vast increase. Can I point out clearly that Britain takes only a small proportion, as Tamba pointed out, of refugees. Germany, by far a greater number. Spain, France, even Italy too. Not to speak of Greece and Turkey. They're far outweigh us completely in the number that we're taking. And we have to be careful about numbers like that. And when we look across the world, look to a place like Lebanon, the number of refugees it is taking in because of the Syrian war, or if you want to go to South America, a poor country like Colombia are taking a vast number of asylum seekers. So don't get knocked out by the numbers we take here. They're not huge at all by international standards.
Great, thanks very much, John. If I can bring us up to date a little bit, I saw in the Evening Standard a headline that said hundreds of asylum seekers were vaccinated before vulnerable Brits. Do you know if it's true that asylum seekers are prioritised over UK nationals?
Absolute nonsense. It was the Daily Mail, the Evening Standard, and the London magazine Metro made a big thing of this because apparently, and I dare say this bit is true, some doctors were vaccinating asylum seekers in a hotel near Heathrow. Now, people were inclined to say, what right have the doctors to enable asylum seekers to jump the queue like that? Well, we don't know. But I mean, they were ordinary GPs, and very probably they had a very good reason to vaccinate those asylum seekers in a hotel in Heathrow. But generally speaking, this does not happen unless there's an overriding medical reason for doing so.
Great, thank you very much, Angela. I've got one last question, and I think it's one that really pertains to what we do at the university. So what do you feel that institutions such as UK universities like Keele can do more to assist refugee and asylum seekers?
Universities as ivory towers. I'm sure they don't themselves regard themselves that way. But apart from equipping and training people to become engineers, doctors, scientists, research people, etc., hopefully universities widen the minds and the understanding of students to the wider world and give them some kind of understanding of empathy and compassion for what I would call the more vulnerable people in our world. And asylum seekers have been part of our history, very much so since World War II, you know. And I'm glad to say, and to say it publicly, a huge thanks to Keele University, who have, since the dispersal of refugees up to this part of the world since 2000, have stepped forward in many different ways to help out. But particularly, I'd like to thank Russell there and the language department because they've stepped in and helped out consistently all during for a number of years now with through their language department, their students and their tutors in teaching English to asylum seekers in ASHA, and we're very, very grateful for that. And that's one way not only Keele, but other universities can do the same. Another way Keele have helped their students, I think, and help to integrate those students is through the medical students. They have, for the past few years, put a number of the students as placements for a number of hours at ASHA so that they met real asylum seekers and got to know them on a personal basis and got to know the sort of medical problems and other problems that asylum seekers meet. And of course, we've had individual staff and of individual students from Keele who have helped out in running ASHA. So that can be repeated across the country. And some universities have set up bursars, to help students, asylum seekers, to do studies at universities. Others have done a tremendous amount of research that has had both positive and negative effect. The negative effect has been to point out clearly to the government some of the policies, the detrimental effects they have on these vulnerable people. And others, of course, have pointed out some of the benefits that asylum seekers and refugees have brought to this country. Two examples I always like is the person who invented the mini car was an asylum seeker. And you talked about all the different ethnic groups bringing their food here to this country. Well, can I just point out that it was a refugee who made fish and chips a favorite dish here in England. So that's my favorite from asylum seekers. So that's just some of the things that. So the universities are not ivory towers or anything like that, you know. And while you can walk alone among the sylvan setting of Keele, it's lovely to see their interest in a place like ASHA.
Yeah, I want to add something, Russo. I think I totally agree with John, what he said. I want to add two things really, which I think universities should be doing, not only Keele University, but all universities. Universities should open doors to asylum seekers to access to university education. I know there's some schemes, which is some universities have to take 1 to asylum seekers. But in university education should be really open to everyone, including asylum seekers. So universities should look at how they can get together and take more asylum seekers who really want to access to education, to university education. Another area which I think universities should be working in, should be involved, is to help asylum seeker system to challenge those social policies, those no social policies, I'm not meaning social policies, those hostile environment policies, really to help to challenge them, because universities are big institutions, and I believe that they can do it through research, publications, forum, conference, all those kind of means to challenge some of the government decisions. Also, those hostile publication demo for like when they say asylum seekers, they're taking more, they're putting more stress on our health system and education. Would be very good if Evening Standard publish an article like that. There's some university write with clear research how many asylum seekers are accessing to healthcare and some of the policies stopping them to access to it. I think that would be very, 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 very helpful for asylum seeker system. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. Universities have a unique skill set. Universities are very good at engaging in public debate, and I think it's only right that universities should use these skill sets to challenge some of the claims that we see, which are clearly incorrect in the mainstream media. We have one last question that's come through on the chat, and again, I think a very important question, and it's from Alex again. Do you know if young people who are refugee and asylum seekers get much support from school? And if so, what kind of support? So we know what ASHA is able to offer asylum seekers. What about in primary and high school?
Certain schools can apply for special financial help when asylum seekers are placed in the schools, you know. Now, whether it's adequate or not is another question, but they can apply, and they do apply. And I must say now, I've only this at secondhand because I don't deal directly with schools, but I know that the progress that children seem to make at these schools that have a number of asylum seekers, is very significant indeed. They seem to have tremendous care and to integrate them extremely well. But obviously, I don't have first-hand experience, but I've just known it from the children, or talking to the children, and them telling me about their teachers and their friends and that at school.
I think generally speaking, primary schools are very good because teachers in primary schools care for children, and so they'll care for children from wherever they come. I think it's often a bit more problematic in secondary schools, although generally the same would pertain. But we did have occasion last summer when one or two schools had great difficulty making food vouchers available to our children. But very often it was on the grounds of misunderstanding and the fact that the government hadn't helped by asking parents to apply online for the vouchers and then print them off, which was really a far cry from anything that a family seeking asylum could do. And I suppose one of the small good things to come out of the pandemic is that ASHA's part-time worker who helps new children get into school has, through the problems that have been confronted, actually built a much stronger relationship with schools, because teachers and ASHA's worker have had to come together to solve a common problem. And that is quite a bonding relationship. So, you know, there's the good and there's the bad, but generally I think the good triumphs.
I hope so, Angela. It's something that we can all cling on to. Right. I'm afraid we've run out of time. So I need to bring this to a close. It only remains for me to express my great thanks, my gratitude to everyone involved today, to John and Angela, but especially also to Tamba and Godfrey for all their help and support in making the video. Thank you to everybody for your questions, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the activities that we've got planned for you for the remainder of Refugee Week.